Welcome to Lesson 6. So far we've just looked at key signatures written in the treble clef. And those of you who play piano will know that key signatures in the bass clef aren't written identically, although they are similar. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to write all the key signatures in all four clefs: treble, bass, alto and tenor. Remember, sharps are always written in the order Father Charles goes down and ends battle, and flats are always written in the order battle ends and down goes Charles' father, regardless of which clef is being used. It happens to be that flats are the easiest to deal with, so we'll start with the flat key signatures. Flat key signatures always start with B flat and always with the B flat nearest the middle of the stave, so the middle line of the treble clef, or the second line of the bass clef, or the second space in the alto clef, or the third space in the tenor clef. Once you've written that first B flat in the key signature, you go up to E flat, down to A flat, up to D flat, down to G flat, up to C flat, and down to F flat. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Sharp key signatures are slightly harder, okay? They always start with F sharp, and that F sharp is near the top of the stave, except in the case of the tenor clef, which we're going to ignore for the moment, as the tenor clef follows an entirely different rule. So, for treble and bass clefs and the alto clef too, find the line or space nearest the top of the stave where F is, and that is where the sharp goes. Then down to C sharp, up to G sharp, down to D sharp, and down again to A sharp, up to E sharp and down to B sharp. Down, up, down, down, up, down. Okay, now for the tenor clef. Tenor clef sharp key signatures are, in my opinion, topsy-turvy. No matter how often I look at them, they look odd. Find the F sharp near the bottom of the clef on the second line, and then use the same rule as for flat key signatures: up, down, up, down, up, down. Up to C sharp, down to G sharp, up to D sharp, down to A sharp, up to E sharp, and down to B sharp. Okay, now for a different bit of knowledge needed for grade 5 music theory and beyond. Every note of the scale can be labelled with a number, so that in a C major scale, C is the first degree of the scale, D is the second degree, E is the third degree, and so on. But as well as describing notes within a scale by number, by numerical degree, there are technical names you need to learn for notes of the scale, so that if you want to study music at a higher level later on, you can use the same technical language as other music students without confusion or without looking less clever than them. In the same way, if you wanted to study engineering in cars, it's a good idea to be able to talk about the engine, the gearbox, the battery, not wave vaguely under the bonnet and talk about the thingy, the what's it, and that thing which gives you an electrical shock. The bottom and top notes of a major or minor scale The note which you'll see in the name of the scale are called the tonic. You've heard me use this word before when talking about tonic majors and tonic minors. And one can differentiate, if you want to, between the bottom note and the top note by calling them the lower tonic and the upper tonic. The tonic is the most important note in the scale. The next most important note in the scale is the 5th degree. In the scale of C, it is the note G, and it sort of bosses C about, which is why it's called the dominant. You'll find out more about how the dominant bosses the tonic about when we look at Unit 5, chords. Halfway between the tonic and the dominant, in the case of C major, it's C and G, we have the mediant, E in this case. If it helps, in maths, the median is the middle value of a range of numbers, and the mediant in music lies halfway between the tonic and the dominant. So, in the scale of C major, the 1st degree of the scale is the tonic, the 3rd degree of the scale is the mediant, and the 5th degree of the scale is the dominant. And if I play them all at the same time, I get the chord of C major. More about chords in Unit 5. Now for the other next most important note in the scale. In the key of C, it is F, the 4th degree, and it is called the subdominant. An important word of warning here. The subdominant is not called subdominant because it is below the dominant. Oh no. Using both the treble and bass clefs here, I can show that it is called the subdominant because it is as far below the tonic as the dominant is above the tonic. And just as between the tonic and dominant you find the mediant, between the tonic and subdominant you find the submediant. The mediant, if you like, of the chord that hangs from the tonic rather than the chord that sits on the tonic. So if we put these notes in order in a scale like this, yes, the subdominant happens to be below the dominant, but that's not why it has that name, because the submediant happens to be above the mediant, but now you know why. And that leaves just 2 notes to name. The note immediately above the tonic is called the supertonic, and the note immediately below the tonic is called, rather disappointingly I think, the leading note. The leading note leads us up to the tonic at the top, the upper tonic. Spend time learning these notes in this order: tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, leading note, tonic. You will need this knowledge in the grade 5 theory examination. And now for something completely different. Chromatic scales. Having reached grade 5 on an instrument, you will have been playing chromatic scales for some time. The writing of chromatic scales is quite simple enough if you learn 2 basic rules. Every space and every line must have either 1 note or 2 notes in it. Not 3 or more, not 0, 1 or 2. No two notes in a chromatic scale should ever be enharmonic equivalents of each other. This is particularly true of the relationship between the bottom note and the top note. If the bottom note is C sharp, then the top note must also be C sharp. It cannot be D flat. Here is a chromatic scale beginning on C, written in 3 different but equally correct ways. The first uses only sharps, the second uses only flats and naturals, and the third a mixture, but all 3 follow the 2 rules that I've just given you. The third version is how I was taught to write a chromatic scale, and it follows a third rule which seems to have gone out of fashion since I was a student, which stated that the tonic, the note at the bottom at the top, and the dominant were to be treated as special cases and not duplicated with accidentals. So, in the third version, C and G only appear as C and G. There are no C sharps, G flats, or G sharps. Be aware of this third rule, but do not allow yourself to be enslaved by it, as it can cause more problems than solutions, as demonstrated by this example, which follows all 3 rules, a chromatic scale beginning on G flat. G flat, A double flat, A flat, B double flat, C flat, and so on. Seriously, all those double flats just to stick to that last rule? This is better because it happens to be more readable. We've reached the point where we've covered all the theory needed in Unit 3, Keys and Scales. Come back to Lesson 7, where we will look at how this knowledge is tested in the theory examination.